I'm very excited to be here. So this is actually my first live event since the whole COVID started. And really excited to be here with you guys for the Entrepreneurial Challenge. So my name's Fiona Young. I'm an executive coach, and I primarily focus on helping companies and leaders understand the younger generations better. And at the same time, I also work with young talents like yourself to prepare you for future leadership positions. So today we're going to discuss a little bit around decoding personal branding. Personal branding has become such a huge buzzword, right? But sometimes it's really difficult to nail down how can you even create your own personal brand. So I'm going to share a little bit from different perspectives because my background is actually from corporate. So I was in corporate for 14 years before I embarked into my entrepreneurial journey. So yeah, I was 14 years working in oil and gas at Royal Dutch Shell, in fact. We have 120,000 employees in the world. And so it's really important to stick out, right? To stick out with the right purpose, with delivering results as well. So I actually left Shell in September 2017, and I'll share a little bit more why I left. But it's essentially really working with people like yourself to prepare you for your work life, but also to prepare you for future leadership positions so that you can become inspiring to other people as well. So how it all started, you may not notice it, but I'm actually a banana. I'm yellow on the outside and white on the inside because I'm actually from Germany. So I grew up in Germany and I started my career at Royal Dutch Shell. And when I graduated, my first job in 2003 was actually in the refinery. So it looks kind of like that. And you have to imagine, I was young, I was an ethnic minority, and I'm a female. So a lot of challenges, obviously, when you jump in your first job and you don't know anyone there. You have team members who have 20, 30 years tenure in the organization. And then there's me, someone who really stood out, almost like a sore thumb, right? I look different, I am female, I'm young, and one of the things I had to do in the refinery was actually to challenge very senior people how they are actually handling their budgets, because I'm the financial advisor. So I have to challenge them and ask them, how are you actually dealing with your budget? Are you over plan? Are you under plan? And so I actually was labeled as someone who is quite shy when I first started working. I wasn't able to challenge enough. That was what my boss told me. And so for me, I wanted to, of course, stand out for the right reasons. I wanted to deliver great results, but at the same time, also want to be known for something. Because like I said, in my company, we're 120,000 people. So how do you really stick out? So for me, and as you can obviously see, I have what we call the diversity token. So my nickname at work in Germany was actually that I'm the diversity token. It's actually not really inclusive, obviously. But then I thought, instead of getting upset about that nickname, why don't I make it something of a advantage, right? So how do I turn my adversities into an advantage? So I actively utilize those diversity terms. So yes, I'm female, yes, I'm young, and yes, I am an ethnic minority. So I actually labeled myself as well as a diversity token, but I also wanted to make sure that I deliver results, that I know my strengths, that I know what my goals are, because I jumped into a financial role, but actually I didn't graduate with a finance degree. Yeah, I didn't want to do finance. I wanted to be more closer to our customers. I wanted to be maybe in marketing, maybe in sales. I wasn't sure yet because it was my first job, right? So having that clarity of what you really want to do will also help to shape your personal brand. So that gave me clarity. Knowing my uniqueness, what we also call unique selling proposition. So knowing what's unique about yourself, where your talents, where your strengths, and then coupled with that, also being consistent and communicating it to others so that they know who you are and what you really want to achieve with your personal brand. Then, after 14 years, I actually decided to take the leap as an entrepreneur. So, what I found most inspiring, what I did in Shell, my last job was head of custom operations. So, I had people working with me who were as many years in the organization as I'm old, and they're almost retiring. But I also had team members who were very young, who just came out of university. They're based in Malaysia. They wanted to, they really wanted to climb up the corporate ladder. So for me, it's also the perception of being one of the youngest head of custom operations. And of course, being a diversity token, being a minority token, you actually have a lot of eyes on you. So I had a lot of eyes on me in terms of, can she actually do that? She's still so young. She doesn't have experience. So that was also the time where I developed my leadership skills. It was through challenges, through the struggles. And then I decided in 2017 that because what I really enjoy most doing it, what I do in Shell, is actually helping others to gain clarity themselves and to help them propel into a really great leader or just to do their jobs well. So I did a lot of mentoring, I did a lot of coaching internally, and it really brought joy to me to see how people succeeded. And working also in the space of people, because a lot of my team members, we're in that space of helping others, so helping our customers. I also wanted to see whether or not everything that we've done in Shell could also benefit externally. And for me, of course, it was a daunting idea to leave corporate life. I call it my corporate comfort zone because I've only been in one company for 14 years. I've never seen anything else, let alone actually starting up my own business. Having said that, I come from an entrepreneurial family. So my grandfather, my great-grandfathers, both sides, maternal and paternal, they all ran their own business. My father actually moved from Malaysia to Germany and opened up his own restaurant. So I guess it's probably also part of my DNA. Eventually, I'll get there to run my own business, but I didn't expect it to happen so soon. So the new challenge that I faced when I decided to leave corporate life and to establish my own coaching and consulting company is that I was being perceived as, again, too young, yeah, as a coach. So I had people actually coming up to me and ask me whether I just graduated from university and all of a sudden decide to become a life coach. So the perception I need to be aware of, how do others perceive me? Because your personal brand, even though you have it under control, how you design your personal brand, at the end of the day, it's actually how others also perceive you, how they label you. So that was my challenge. And how do I overcome that? So for me, personal branding really matters because it's, again, standing out for the right reasons. And I come from a Western society. I work with a lot of different nationalities in Shell, but also right now. And I also found that a lot of people who are very successful, who could climb up the corporate ladder, what they have in common is not only that they're great achievers, but they were also very good at sharing their achievements, but in a very humble way. So those are the ones I would call my role models when it comes to personal branding, because they don't only stand out, but they stand out with the right reasons, because they add value, because they're great leaders, because they support others as well. The other thing is also, you only have one chance to make a first impression. It's really milliseconds when you meet someone new that you already form an idea about that person, an opinion about that person. So you don't get a second chance for first impression. So that's why it's really important. I mean, one simple thing to remember is also, when you meet someone new, of course, now we don't really shake hands, but we do assess the level of strength, how you shake hands, especially during or before an interview. It does make an impression that could derail how great you actually are. Yeah. And so it's also where you want to build something. You want to build a personal brand that is authentic to you, that is genuine. It's not about copying other people. It's really about being you, yourself, so that it doesn't come across fake. Yeah, so personal branding is not about being fake, but creating an authentic brand around yourself. And for me, what's really important is also helping others. That's also part of the brand. It's about understanding your goals, helping others, but also when you understand your goals, what you want to achieve with your brand. So for me, from a corporate perspective, my brand was someone who is obviously a diversity token, but at the same time, I don't get upset about that, but rather dive into it. So I actually facilitated a lot of diversity and inclusion workshops in Shell. I helped my colleagues to understand unconscious bias, and I also wanted to create cultural awareness. So instead of being upset about being labeled as something, I actually use it to my strength. And I really deep dive into it, and also founded the first women's network at Shell here in Hong Kong. So by understanding your goal, you are also able to articulate it to others. So like I just mentioned to you, I didn't want to be in finance. I just got moved into finance, but I wanted to do something else. And so for me, I actually was very clear about what I wanted to do. So I need to actually share it with others. Others like my mentors, my direct line managers, with people who have maybe an idea what kind of career I could do, because finance really didn't excite me. I did it very well to the level where I became a regional finance manager, but it wasn't my passion. So when you have your personal brand, you also have to know your goal so that you can articulate it to others. So whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you are embarking into your corporate journey, you need to share that with others so that they also know how they can help you. So this is a statement that I find extremely relevant when we discuss personal brand. So if you don't build your personal brand, someone else will brand you with the wrong label. Yeah, so it's something that you actually have under your control. But oftentimes we just don't know where to start, right? So that's why I want to share with you also why it's so important to have a personal brand. Because most often when I talk to students, because I mentor a lot of young students like yourself, they really want to focus more on the hard skills, things that are quantifiable. Yeah, so it's like your accounting, finance knowledge, legal, technical, engineering. And I come from an engineering background in terms of industry. So a lot of my colleagues, they don't like this fluffiness of personal branding. So they focus more on the technical skills. But the soft skills, these are the unmeasurable ones. So it's your attitude. Do you come across optimistic? Are you enthusiastic? It's also your behavior. How do you establish rapport with each other? What kind of social behavior do you have? And how are your communication skills? Are you able to excite others with a compelling message? That is really key as an entrepreneur, because oftentimes what we do, like myself as a coach or a trainer, there's so many out there already. So how can I actually stick out? It's actually by being myself. It's the charisma. that actually sets us apart. It's not what we do, but it's how we do it and why we're doing it. So you can see here personal brand, and also when you go into the corporate career, it's the executive and professional presence. So based on study by Carnegie Foundation and Stanford University, they say that hard skills only counts 15% in order to be successful, whether it's being an entrepreneur or whether you want to be in a corporate setting. And the other part is really the soft skills. So it's not only personal brand, but all the other relevant items like communication skills. How do you create relationships? How do you network? Networking is a very key element. But everything together is obviously 100% success. But it is, of course, more comfortable and more convenient to focus on the hard skills because you kind of have it under control instead of looking at the fluffy stuff, at the soft skills. So another quote that I love to share is that your personal brand is everything that you are plus everything people believe you to be. So it's not only where we have it under our control to build our personal brand, but at the same time, how is it being perceived by other people? So I have this 3-step approach that I like to share with you. So it doesn't sound so fluffy, right? When you hear personal brand. First things first is about defining your aspiration. So my aspiration with my personal brand in corporate was that I wanted to get into roles that are not finance related. That is my goal. So how do I do that? Is by talking to a lot of different people, talking to my mentor, being involved in projects that are not in my job scope so that I can actually be immersed in the space of non-finance related activities. From an entrepreneurial perspective, so being a coach, what I want to do is focus a lot on young leadership, developing young leaders, but also helping mature leaders to understand the younger generation so that we can create inclusive and engaged workplaces. So that is my aspiration with my personal brand. The next thing is about your unique selling proposition. Again, this word sounds very heavy, very profound. Essentially, what it means is that you need to know what are your strengths, what are your talents, what are your passion. Again, when you are coming up with your entrepreneurial idea, with your innovative idea, I'm pretty sure it exists somewhere already. Yeah, the wheel has already been invented. But what sets you apart, what sets your project or your company apart is actually how you do it and how you connect emotionally with the other person, with other people. So you need to understand yourself first before you can actually go out there and help others with your services or your products. So think about what is actually your unique selling proposition? What is it that you can do what other people cannot deliver? One way to think about it, and obviously would love you guys to write it down because I'm not sure whether you can all memorize it, but one question that you could ask yourself in terms of unique selling proposition, if you do not know what it is what do people actually go to you for advice? That is usually a good indication of where your talents are. So think about that. And when you do your business plan, at least for me, I did a SWOT analysis, right? Does anyone know what a SWOT analysis is? Yes? Just one person? 2, 3, okay. Have you ever done a personal SWOT based on yourself? Yes? Great. What's your experience? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So what your classmate just said is that you're using the SWOT analysis anyway from a business perspective, but why not use it on yourself, right? So you actually use a SWOT analysis, you identify your strengths, you identify your weaknesses or areas for improvement, if you want to use that word, and you identify what are the threats and the opportunities there are. So why stop at that, right? Just use the SWOT analysis also for yourself. So that is, I would say, one of the easiest way to identify your unique selling proposition. Obviously, another way is to ask people, ask for feedback. So for me as a executive coach, I want to if you look at my business card, I actually don't put executive coach there, but intergenerational leadership coach. Because there's so many executive coaches out there already. I want to be known for someone who bridges the generational gap. So if you check out my LinkedIn, which I would highly encourage you to do that as well, is you will see there, I don't have a job title, but rather how do I help others? Because that is what makes me unique. And we all have something unique. It just takes some time for us to sit down and assess what's the strength and the talents that we have. But one question that you also can ask yourself is really, why do people come to you for advice? What kind of advice are they expecting from you? So that's typically your talent. The other one is communicating your brand. Again, it's not about just creating something and designing your personal brand, but you need to amplify that. You need to communicate that. So when I first left corporate life, in September 2017, I worked really hard on creating that personal brand because I asked people how they introduce me. And they said, well, you're a coach, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's true. That's what I do, but it's not why I'm doing it or how I'm doing it. So it's really good to also understand how others perceive you just by asking them, how would you introduce me? And if that is not congruent, if that is not aligned with how you want to be introduced, you need to work hard on that in order for them to introduce you in the way you want to be seen. So communicating your personal brand, not only in person. So this is something actually in corporate life. Of course, I would do a lot of networking. I will create meaningful connections. I'll make sure that if there is a senior person, I introduce myself. But we have social media as well these days. So I utilize LinkedIn a lot as an entrepreneur, but also when I was still in corporate. So before I left Shell, I was actually headhunted by Apple. And Apple only checked out my LinkedIn profile. I didn't submit any application. And I've never worked at any tech company. 14 years, I was only in oil and gas. So for some reason, my LinkedIn profile was updated to the way that they are actually looking at keywords, and they headhunted me. And so LinkedIn is a very, I would say, efficient and simple way to also articulate your personal brand. When I first started as an entrepreneur, I wanted to focus on generational inclusion. So one of my connections actually told me that I should develop some sort of thought leadership. Sounds very daunting, sounds very kind of like bragging, but he just told me, think about one keyword that when people hear it, when people see it, they will immediately connect it with you. And so I was brainstorming in terms of where is my expertise? Where are my talents, but also where are my passion and who do I want to help? And that is young leaders. And young leaders are typically millennials. I'm a millennial myself. I've suffered through leadership as well because there wasn't any handrails. So I used that term, the buzzword millennial, and I constantly started talking about it on LinkedIn. It's through video posts or just written posts, but I make sure whatever I do is always linked to generations. And I use the buzzword millennial because it's just catchy, right? So I established that personal brand because I know that it worked because people are now constantly sending me videos and articles about millennials and generations because they tie that specific terminology with me, right? They don't tie it with any other coaches. So I leverage on looking young, being young, kinda, and use that as my personal brand. So this is a three-step approach. Is very simple, but of course not easy to implement. So something that I would like you to think about is also, how do you want to be introduced? In 10 years' time, what do you want people to say about you when there is a dinner party and the host is introducing you? They're gonna say, this is, right? This is Fiona. She's known for ... Think about that. What do you want to be known for, right? Is it something about your entrepreneurial spirit? Is it that you're super excited about female empowerment? There are lots of things. So nail down what you want to be known for and how you want this host to introduce you to the other dinner guests. And try to fill out the blanks. We'll share the slides with the students, right? So that you can actually take some time to think about that. This is my personal brand statement. And I hope that after this session, after this workshop, you can also take some time off to think about your personal brand statement. It's a promise to others. So my promise to others is that as an intergenerational leadership coach, I help leaders and organizations bridge the generational gaps in the workplace so that everyone can thrive with their unique strengths and talents. So this is my personal brand statement. And I make it very personal, very authentic, and quite emotional as well. So it has to be relevant for you and for others. The thing with personal brand statements, we assume that they sound a little bit braggy, right? But it just really nails down in terms of where are your unique selling proposition, where are your talents, but also how do you help others? Because essentially what we do when you are creating your business plan, you want to help others, right? With your products, with your services. So you need to amplify that as well. So think about, what is your personal brand statement? Again, communication is the key because you have the recipe now, you have the recipe and all the ingredients, you got to mix them together in order to create your personal brand. But you also need to communicate it because it's no point to create something but no one actually knows about it. Like I said, as an entrepreneur, in the first 3 months, I actually amplified my personal brand on LinkedIn, like a lot. I posted almost on a daily basis so that people really know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So how do you communicate your personal brand? Especially when you're still in corporate, but also, as a student, as an entrepreneur, is about networking. And some people who might be introverts here in the room may feel that it's quite daunting to meet new people. How do you do that? Do you even have anything to share? Like a lot of my mentees, they're very concerned that they don't have anything relevant to share. But actually, we all do. And for me, networking is about creating meaningful connections. Yeah, it's not just a once-off meeting, but it's about establishing rapport by continuously and regularly catching up with each other. So if you're in a company, if you're working, obviously you join internal events and you make a positive impression. One of my colleagues actually set a target that whenever there is a town hall meeting, he will have to ask at least one question. He forced himself in front of 500 people and probably the VP, the chairman, to ask one question. I mean, an intelligent question. So he actually thought about it beforehand. So he has been known for someone who is very engaged in these kind of town hall meetings where typically people are probably falling asleep or looking at their mobile phones. So again, seek for mentorship. That's also a good way, right? Learn from a role model and also join industry relevant conferences. So these are the things that you can do. One of the things that I also felt I didn't do enough when I was still in corporate was to actually network externally. I was still in my corporate bubble because we have a lot of opportunities internally, so I missed out. So that is also a key learning for me. Thought leadership, again, everyone can be a thought leader. We all have our own opinions and is something relevant that we also can share with each other. So you can also start thinking about posting your blogs, maybe even vlogs, some videos where you share some insights about you. I mean, Instagram allows that. It doesn't have to be very lengthy, but talk about the things that really matter to you. Create that brand. I also started writing articles, not only on LinkedIn or for my own website, but also on behalf of other publications. Again, it's always the same theme because I want to make sure that it's on brand. I don't want to diversify myself too much. That's also one of the key concerns a lot of people have, that if they narrow down too much, if they just focus on a niche, then they would lose out on all the opportunities. But at the end, we're not jack of all trades. We have to be very focused. So whenever people ask me to write a blog or do a video for them, there has to be an element of generations or inclusion. And speaking at conferences and events like this, obviously. So internal and external communities. If you're in a company, there are employee resource groups like networks, graduate networks, women's networks. When I first started my career, I actually was on the committee for the graduates network in Shell in Germany. And then later on, I founded the women's network for Shell in Hong Kong. So you can do that. If you feel that this community doesn't exist yet, why not just create it yourself? Volunteer work is also a good way to make meaningful connections and to amplify your brand. Last but not least, online presence. A lot of focus has been put on online presence. So it's again the brand consistency. What do you talk about? Is it really consistent with what you want to be known for? And again, very important if you are embarking into your corporate career, make sure that also whatever you want to be known for is also consistent on your social media. Actually, the HR director at Apple told me during lunchtime that, especially with the younger generations, they are not mindful what they post on social media, but they do check your Instagram, your Facebook, your LinkedIn, and whatnot. So these guys actually do that. They will take their time. And one person, even though they had great qualifications, actually lost out on the job because of that. Because the person posted something very political back in the days, 3 years ago, and that wasn't on brand for Apple. Yeah, so just be mindful of that, how you also come across on social media. I Google myself too once in a while because, like I said, I do a lot of publications and videos, and I want to make sure that how others are perceiving me is also how I want to be perceived. And if not, I will actually reach out to that person to tell them to take some stuff down. Yeah, so Google yourself. It's really interesting what you find there. And also the images that are still on the internet. Yeah. How LinkedIn perceives me, like I said, LinkedIn has been a very essential tool for me, regardless of whether I'm an entrepreneur or I was in a corporate setting. So this is how LinkedIn perceived me. And when I first started utilizing LinkedIn, I only had less than 900 connections and followers. And over the years, over 3 years, I grew it to 9,540 now. followers and about 6,000 connections. And I have almost 10,000 people view my profile on a weekly basis. And my videos are being viewed 11,000 times. So that gives me a really good reach and visibility. Yeah. Your personal brand is also helping you with regards to your visibility. For me in Shell as well, being on the radar for jobs that are maybe not posted yet, but also as an entrepreneur, having that visibility is absolutely important. Again, as you can see, it didn't jump overnight. It takes a lot of work. Yeah. It's not an overnight thing. So consistency is the key. So this Jeff Weiner, you may know him, the CEO of LinkedIn. So I was also mentioned in his video. And Miguel Forbes, he is, yeah, the person behind Forbes, also mentioned me in his post. This one is where I wanted to share with you that for this LinkedIn post, I got 70,000 views. Okay, so these are the things that can happen to you and ideally should happen to you, but there's a lot of work behind that. There's a lot of hustling. Yeah, you only see, of course, the highlights, right? The show reel, but there's a lot of work behind it. So that's the reason why I'm saying you got to put in the effort now to decode your personal brand. You have a lot of insights from this session, but essentially it boils down to you whether or not you're going to take actions. And you can measure the return on investment because a lot of people tell me, oh, personal brand, that's just so fluffy. I don't feel comfortable. So as a job seeker, you can measure the return on investment when you work on your personal brand by looking at whether or not you land a role in your desired company. I actually put a top 3 of companies that I wanted to join, and Apple was one of them. And I designed my LinkedIn profile in such a way that companies like Apple would actually come to me proactively. When you receive a promotion in XYZ months, that is a return on investment. A successful transition into a new role, that is, of course, also ROI. So that's for job seekers. For leaders, some of you might be leading teams, right? Project teams. That's, I would consider also being a leader. It's about, okay, do you receive great 360-degree feedback, right? How do your peers perceive you? How does your boss perceive you? How do your direct reports perceive you? High retention rates and attracting new talents. So these are return on investments as well. As an entrepreneur, so probably this is something that you find most interesting. That's also something that I set as my KPI, as a key performance indicator. I wanted to be mentioned by the press and media. Yeah, so that was my key performance indicator, but very specific which media, because I want to target more corporate clients. So I go for publications like Forbes, Financial Times, SCMP, right? So set that target. What kind of press and media do you want to, be, where do you want to get publicized? Achieving business KPIs, right? So in your business plan, you need to share your KPIs. So my business plan was also a great kind of indicator of whether or not my personal brand works. So how many clients can I attract on a weekly basis? How many companies can I collaborate with? How many events or conferences can I speak at in a year? So these are return on investments. And of course, being known as an industry expert and a thought leader. For me, again, because I know from a cultural perspective, here in Asia, we feel that we don't like self-promotion. But at the end of the day, self-promotion is not bragging if it's based on facts. That's something that I learned yesterday from a Google webinar where they talk about self-promotion. Because especially people from minority background, we feel that self-promotion is like bragging, but it is not if it's based on facts. So you're also adding value to others. That's for me very key and very essential. Your personal brand should amplify how you can make a positive impact and a difference to other people's lives. And the other thing is that you can have a personal brand, you can communicate it, but you can communicate it in a way that is humble. So for me, humility plays a big part in how I do things and why I do things. Is really having an accurate, neither overestimating nor underestimating your success in view of your own ability. So humility is a really big part from my perspective. So this is what Jeff Bezos said, the Amazon guy. Your personal brand is what people say when you're not in the room. So just let that sink in. Your personal brand is what people say when you're not in the room, right? And if you don't know what they're saying about you in the room, ask that person, right? Just get feedback, because we don't know whether we're successful with our personal brand if we do not receive feedback. So ask for feedback proactively and learn from it. So this is the last slide, just everything on one page. Again, identify your strengths and talents, use your personal SWOT analysis, ask for feedback, and then it's also obviously looking at your areas for improvement with the SWOT analysis, right? You will also identify those and minimize those gaps. And again, core values. Core values are really important. You should start to think about what are your core values. Does anyone, so my core values is honesty, integrity, and enthusiasm. Everything that I do in my personal and professional life is based on these core values, these three core values. If anything is violated or not met, I will not do it. So who here in this room actually know their core values? Raise your hand. No. Okay. So you got to start thinking about that. And you can find actually online, there are very simple activities how you can identify your core values. If we would have more time, we will do this exercise together. So maybe we'll have another opportunity to do that. But please start thinking about what are your values, because when you run your own business, you got to know what you stand for. You got to have core values for your business as well. And the other one is defining your why, right? Why are you doing certain things? Like I said again, there are so many coaches out there. There are so many trainers out there. But where I stand out is because of why I'm doing it. And when you share your pitch, it's always going to start with why. Don't focus on what you're delivering, what you're creating, what kind of app you're building, but why are you doing that? There needs to be a personal story behind it. And again, your personal brand is actually a promise, because you're promising others that this is something that you're going to deliver. So think about your personal brand statements. And last but not least, just be yourself. Like Oscar Wilde said, be yourself because everyone else is already taken. Be authentically you, and do that consistently and constantly. And one last question I would like you to think about is, what is just one action? What is one action that you will take once you leave this room today? What is one action that you will do in order to enhance your personal brand? Because it's not only knowing what to do, but it's doing what you know. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Fiona. So we will have a little fireside chat Q&A section on stage. May I invite Fiona on stage and also Dr. Man on stage?
Okay.
Thank you, Fiona. Okay, I'm sure you have more to share with us. Okay, but because of a limited time, this we have to stop you. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so okay, I'm sure our students here also have a lot of questions. But let me begin with a couple of questions first. Okay, I'm very impressed with your three steps approach. Okay, first of all, okay, having aspiration. I'm sure for most of you here, okay, you aspire to become an entrepreneur, right? There's no need to say more about this. But for the second stage, you're talking about the USB, okay, the unit selling proposition. Uh, they're all students. They're all students, okay? They may be still exploring their own career, although they want to start their own business, but they don't, probably do not know what to start with, and they do not know their own strength. Can you share with us more about that for people like them? How do they find that USP, sorry.
All of you have a USP. All of you have a talent. It's just that it's very deep rooted inside of you, and you haven't really explored it yet. So one of the really simple tools that you can apply is really the SWOT analysis, right? Asking also other people, asking your mentors, asking your teachers, your professors, or also your peers, what are my strengths? And also something in terms of strengths, I would say, is passion, because you can own, your strengths are usually also your passion, because when you're passionate about something, you'll do it no matter what, whether there are challenges in front of you, you'll still persevere because you're passionate about something. But one of the key things when I first started my career to identify my strengths is really to ask for proactive feedback from people who really see me from a very neutral perspective as well. Ask for feedback, do your SWOT analysis, think about that question. What do people go to you for to seek advice?
It's unclear, then how to start with this, okay? Okay, maybe after the swap, personal swap, they're still, okay, I'm still very, not so clear about myself. So what further advice that
Yeah.
you do that they can do?
I would say it's a journey, right? I mean, especially in the beginning when I first started my career, like I said, I joined the finance department. I don't feel that finance is my strength. And so by trying out different things and being curious and a continuous learner, you'll be able to identify where your strengths. Honestly speaking, I've never done these kind of presentations before in front of people. I never saw myself as a public speaker. Obviously, I needed to do that to amplify my brand when I first stepped out of my corporate comfort zone. But if I didn't try it out, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know that this is actually a strength of mine.
Much, okay? For the final step, you talk about communication. In particular, you mentioned about LinkedIn, okay? Your profile is really impressive, okay? I think very few people over the world have so many followers like you. But for them, okay, as student, I think they're using Facebook is outdated already, right? Instagram and this kind of thing. Okay, LinkedIn maybe our impression is that LinkedIn is more for professional business people. But do you advise students like them to develop a LinkedIn profile at this stage when they're still year 2, year 3, or final year student at this stage?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's never too early to start creating that profile. I think personal brand will take time to develop as well. It evolves. So for me, initially, I focus a lot around coaching, but then I noticed because I love speaking, I love the energy in the room, I wanted to also be known for as a keynote speaker. So it's really important that you start early because your personal brand may evolve. And LinkedIn, there are so many online tutorials or templates and guidance. Is really easy to just update that. And I think it's also where you can nail down where your strengths and where are the areas that you want to update, where you want to work on, because it's not only your profile, but when you go on LinkedIn, there are so many other people that you should be following to learn from them. So one thing is, of course, have a great profile that people know who you are and why you're doing certain things the way you do. But you want to become an entrepreneur, right? I mean, that's the reason why you're here. So you need to already start thinking about, how do you want to be perceived on LinkedIn, on social media, and you cannot start too early. I have been working with my mentees who are, when I first started mentoring them, they were 16 years old and they already started their LinkedIn profile. So it's never too early to start.
So many of them are actually very active in social media. Okay. Do you mean that they have to be very cautious about what they say, what they write in the social media in order to be consistent for their future career? Yeah.
Yes. Very simple answer.
Yeah.
Yes. One of the things that we have on Instagram, obviously, is that when we post stories, it goes away after 24 hours. We know that, right? And then you can post the stories which are just limited to close friends. So when you follow me on Instagram, please do that. So my handle is FYI, like for your information, _coach. Yeah, so that's my handle. You will notice that I don't actually post a lot of like personal stuff there because I use another Instagram handle to do that. I want my clients who are primarily of the mature generation to also see me as a very professional person, but at the same time, I work with younger people like yourself. So I also want to show my authentic self where, I go to the gym, I go for hikes, I have a huge Malamute, I have a huge dog at home, so you'll see photos of him, but I'm very mindful what I post because at the end of the day, people do their research.
Very good advice to us. Okay. So for students, any question from you? Okay, to ask Fiona. Okay, good. Okay.
Hi, I'm Kelly. This is a question from our students in the live viewing room. I just read the question
Okay.
Okay,
aloud.
good.
How to build your own network under people who is not humble?
Who is not?
Humble. HUMBLE.
So how to build a network if
Under
people
people not humble.
if other people are not humble?
Yeah. Thank you.
That is an interesting question. So I imagine this question to be something like, you are in a room with a lot of people and you need to introduce yourself, but then other people are a bit louder than you. So that's kind of like how I interpret the question. We all have our different styles, and it's one of the things that I would ask you to also do is assess your Myers-Briggs. So are you an extrovert? Are you an introvert? There are free online assessments called 16 personalities. So that's also something I would urge you to do. Understanding ourselves is actually the key step in order to brand ourselves. So I'm an extrovert, right? So I don't mind being in a room with a lot of people because I get that energy from them. But obviously there are also others who may be a little bit less humble, who are a bit louder. So, I just had an experience yesterday at the Google webinar where there was one person, another participant, who was very vocal and kind of hijack the whole conversation. So one way that how I would deal with it is, accepting that others are like that, but we don't have to copy them. So we can also still connect and network separately. So for me, I also feel very uncomfortable in a big setting when we do like official networking events, and some people are just very gung-ho about it. What I do is I collect a business card, or I would connect with them immediately on LinkedIn, and I reach out to them separately. And tell them, hey, I really enjoyed our conversation, really enjoyed your sharing. I would love to hear more. Could we catch up for a coffee one-on-one? So this is, even for me as an extrovert, I feel the most comfortable having that more deeper connection on a one-to-one basis rather than being in a big room with a lot of people. And some people are just maybe not humble.
Thank you very much. Okay. Any more questions from the rest of you here? If you, yes, please.
My name is Edwin. Um, a year four student. I want to ask that may you give us some directions to write what kind of content in LinkedIn account?
Thanks for the question. Again, it really starts with your why and your personal brand. So before you start posting on LinkedIn, you got to be quite clear about what you want to be known for. So before I started posting, I had to sit down and think about and use my business plan. So my business plan was actually like my North Star. It was my guiding star, the finish line. So having that, I was able to carve out that personal brand, and mine was about generations, especially millennials. Yeah. I hated it when people were bashing about millennials, how they are entitled and lazy and impatient. I just hated that. So I wanted to diminish this misconception about millennials. So I picked that one topic and constantly and consistently articulated that on LinkedIn or on Facebook. So I created written posts like articles, I did videos about it, shared my views. So before you start posting, you got to be clear about what is it that you want to achieve with your posts.
Good. Okay.
And can I ask you a question? Edwin, what is one thing that you will do differently when you walk out of this room? What is that one action?
Try to create a first post in LinkedIn.
Awesome. Okay.
Good.
Make sure we get connected, and then I can also click like.
Okay. Thank you.
More questions? Okay, one more question. Yes. Yeah.
What's this? Since you labeled yourself as a diversity token, since you work in a Germany company, I wanted to ask, like, how do you find like-minded people who share the same goals as you, especially when you're a small part of the community? How did you make it bigger impact? Since I myself is a Filipino and currently I'm a year one student and I want to meet and socialize with more people. I just want to ask an advice and direction on where I should put myself.
Right. Thanks for the question. When I first started in my career in the refinery, there were not a lot of young people. And for me, I felt I missed that connection and also learning from my peers. So what I did was just to research what kind of employee resource groups there are, networks, communities, and I joined them. And not only did I join them, but I wanted to play an active role and drive the whole agenda. So I actually raised my hand to be part of the committee team to create an agenda, create a strategy for the graduates network. So I would suggest you to get more involved in communities, volunteering. There are really lots of ways to meet people. And I actually meet a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but it's surprising how I actually sometimes create leads, so paying clients, by just going for dance classes or playing an instrument. So I'm learning to play the guitar. It's just really, you wouldn't know who you're going to meet. And for me, it's not about meeting a lot of people because I know that I'm going to get something out of you, but it's actually creating a meaningful connection because I feel that we can learn from each other. So networking is something that you should do even before you need help. Because when you only start reaching out to people when you need help, it comes across really opportunistically. So networking needs to start way beforehand and not seeing it as something that you want to get out of the person, but rather how can you enrich each other's lives?
So much, Fiona, for your sharing. Okay, I think because of limited time, we have to come to an end to this session. Okay, please join me to give a big clap to and thank Fiona.
Thank you so much.
Yes, okay.
Thank you. So do follow Fiona online on LinkedIn so you can have an example on how really to build up a LinkedIn file. So we have a souvenir to be given to Fiona to thank you for her time and sharing.